Martinus Theunis Steyn was a South African lawyer, politician, and statesman, sixth and last president of the independent Orange Free State from 1896 to 1902. Birth and youth. The Steyn family farmed near Winburg on the farm Josephinesdal. Steyn was born on the 2nd of October 1857 on the farm Rietfontein near Winburg in the Orange Free State. His father Martinus was away from home, after the death of his own father, to assist his mother. This was a round trip of 3 months from Winburg to Swellendam in the Cape Colony. As Cecilia, Steyn's mother, was pregnant with Martinus Theunis, they thought it safer for her to stay with her sister Gertrude, that was married to Theunis Wessels, which farmed on Rietfontein. Steyn was meant to be named only Martinus after his father, but because of the good care that Theunis and Gertrude took during Cecilia's pregnancy, Steyn was called both after his father Martinus and his uncle Theunis. In later years his family always called him Theunis. During the Basuto War of 1858, the Steyns was driven from the farm and lost almost everything. After the death of Steyn's two grandfathers, his Wessels' grandmother convinced his father to buy his own farm. They bought the farm Zuurfontein on the Modder River, about 13 miles from Bloemfontein. It is on this farm that Steyn spent most of his youth years. It was here that he experienced and came to love the open and free spaces of the Free State. It was days of hard work and assisting with everything on the farm. Steyn started his school years in a small farm school on the farm Ruawal. The school was about 40 minutes per horse and the teacher was a Mr. Wiggins, which taught in English. Another Basuto War started in 1864. The family was again disrupted and Theunis and his brother Tui went to stay with the Wessels' grandmother, from where they attended a little grammar school for a short while, after which they were sent to Grey College. At the age of 16 he left school with his brother Tui to farm on Zuurfontein. Steyn's family lived right across from the then president of the Free State, J.H. Brand, in Bloemfontein. The family formed part of the Dutch families that were socially active. The Steyn home in Bloemfontein, Green Lodge, was the meeting place for the young people of Bloemfontein. The house was open for everybody, from the featured from German origin, the English-speaking Robertses, the Jewish Baumans, English-speaking Afrikaners, like President Brand, as well as the Dutch community. Studies. After finishing his studies at Grey College, and after farming for 4 years on Zuurfontein, a visit by Judge James Buchanan, a member of the Orange Free State High Court, changed Steyn's direction from farming towards further studies in law. According to Judge Buchanan's daughter, he was set on convincing Steyn's father that they needed to send Steyn to the Netherlands to study law at the RIJK's University in Leiden. Leiden University. Steyn and his friend Harry Vels left in May 1877 on the Dunrobin Castle from Port Elizabeth for Cape Town and from there to Europe. In Cape Town more passengers, including Rev. Colin Fraser and his family, on his way to Scotland as delegate for the Free State Church at the Pan-Presbyterian Council. There was also a South African Republic government delegation consisting of Paul Kruger, the then vice president of the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, E.J.P. Jorrison, the state attorney, and the secretary Edward Bok, on the way to England to lay a formal protest against the proclamation of Sir Theophilus Shepstone that there will come an end to the South African Republic. Steyn and Vels did preparatory studies under W.F.P. Enklar and Dr. B. Wisselink at the Gymnasium in Deventer. In September 1879 they would have written their admission exams for the Leiden University. However, they decided to move to England. This decision was made as they needed an English certificate and training to be allowed to practice law in South Africa. Steyn wrote his admission exam in January January 1880 for the Inner Temple in London. Steyn was called to the English bar in November 1882 and shortly afterwards returned to South Africa. Law career. After his return to South Africa, he set up practice as barrister in Bloemfontein. In 1889, Steyn was appointed State Attorney of the Orange Free State. A few months afterwards he became second Queen Judge, and in 1893 first Queen Judge of the High Court. His decisions won him a reputation for ability and sound judgment. Political interest. Martinus Theunis, father of Steyn, as member of the Executive Council, regularly accompanied State President J. H. Brand on visits to determine the needs of the people of the Orange Free State. Steyn, as a lover of books, who even took a small library of books with him during the Anglo-Boer War, was well read. Through his father and visits home, he kept in contact with the latest political views, activities and needs of the people. Steyn's first interest in the politics of the day was initiated by the unlawful annexation of the diamond fields in the Kimberley area by the British government in 1871. After the claims of the Greek captain, Nicholas Waterbury, Britain, driven by its new imperialism, agreed that the Cape Governor, Sir Henry Berkeley, can annex the land. This was in direct conflict of the wishes of the Cape Colony government and the Orange River Convention of 1854. The resolution of the payment of a mere £90,000 and the building of a railway to the Orange Free State by the British government in 1876 was not acceptable to the people. President of the Orange Free State. In 1895, upon the resignation of State President F.W. Wrights, Steyn was the candidate of the Pan-Dutch Party for the vacant post. The election was held in February 1896 and resulted in a decisive victory for Steyn, and he assumed office as president. The beginning of the South African War in 1899 caused Steyn to link the fortunes of his state with those of the Transvaal, allying with them against the British Empire. While the Orange Free State was under British occupation, Steyn ran his government from the field, playing a key role in continuing Boer resistance and the coordination of guerrilla warfare that made up most of the Boer War from 1900 onwards. Regarded as one of the most irreconcilable of the Boer leaders, he took part, however, in the preliminary peace negotiations at Klerksdorp in April 1902, but was prevented by illness from signing the Treaty of Vereeniging at Pretoria on 31 May 1902. The treaty ended the independence of the Orange Free State and Steyn's term as its president. After 1902, by 1902 Steyn was suffering from myasthenia gravis brought on by his constant exertions, and in July 1902 he sailed for Europe, where he remained until the autumn of 1904. He then took the oath of allegiance to the British Crown, and returning to South Africa partially restored to health, resumed an active participation in politics. In 1908–1909 he was vice president of the Closer Union Convention, where he was distinguished for his statesmanlike and conciliatory attitude, while maintaining the rights of the Boer community. His legacy. The Afrikaner Bond. From early on, Steyn, along with many other prominent Free Staters, came under the influence of a clever German named Borkenhagen, editor of the Bloemfontein Express newspaper, and in 1881 he had joined Borkenhagen in founding the Afrikaner Bond. The South African Party. In the South African Union he was a co-founder of the South African Party, which he left in 1914 with James Barry Munnik Hertzog and Christiaan Rudolph de Wet to found the National Party. The National Party. Steyn, James Barry Munnik Hertzog and Christiaan Rudolph de Wet co-founded the National Party in 1914. The Sianamp en Oraniumisia School, the Anglo-Boer War and the great loss in women and children was a driving force behind the origin of the Sianamp en Oraniumisia School, an originally Dutch and now Afrikaans girls' school that was initiated by President Steyn. The school opened its doors in 1907. The National Women's Memorial. The National Women's Memorial, the first monument in the world dedicated to women and children, was unveiled on 16 December 1913 and was initiated by the ideals of President Mt. Steyn and the family friend, Emily Hobhouse, the sculptor Anton van Wouw and the architect Frans Soft did the design for the monument. His death, while addressing a meeting in Bloemfontein in November 1916, he collapsed and died of a heart attack. He was only 58 years old. Steyn's descendants. Steyn has a descendant who practices as a lawyer in Johannesburg. His granddaughter was the well-known South African actress Nerina Ferreira. Quote, "I would rather lose the independence of the Free State with honor than retain it with dishonor," stated before he dispatched the ultimatum to the United Kingdom.